All right, Jim, our next question. Several people have sent me some quotes here. Wanted to get your thoughts. Booker T had this to say on his podcast. I had an agent in WCW. In the beginning, he handled all my contracts until I went singles. I handled my biggest contract. I negotiated my biggest contract. It was well above all the money that my agent had ever negotiated for me. Sometimes twice as much, maybe 3 times. The way I did it was, I remember being asked, how much was it going to take to keep me in WCW? I go, how much am I worth? They came back with a number well above what I was thinking of. You're kidding me, right? I was like, wow, they think that much of me. I can tell it. It was $750,000. My next contract, it was $1.3 million. If the company wouldn't have folded, my next contract was $1.3 million. It was a great time back then. Eric Bischoff was making us rich. He said he was going to do that. He said, Book, I'm going to make you rich. His goal was to make all the wrestlers be paid like NFL players. I give him a lot of credit for that.
Well, I don't know if that was his goal or not. His goal was to make a fucking shitload of money for himself. And if the guys made money since he was giving somebody else's away, that was something else also. But, well, yes, I'm not saying, when I'll comment on this, I'm not saying the Booker's lying. He's telling the truth. But I don't know if it had as much to do with him negotiating his own contracts rather than an agent versus the time he came into the company versus how it progressed from there. And I remember Harlem Heat there in 93?
That's when they got there, yeah.
Okay. In 1993, WCW wasn't making any fucking, but they were losing their ass. Not as much as they'd lose in the year 2000 or whatever, but they were losing their ass. And because I had left, I know that the guys in 91, I was, still there in late 90. I'd had the creative team information, except for, the Flairs and Lugers and Stings of the world and the Road Warriors left. The top guys were, other than that, were making $150,000 a year most of the time on guarantee and not drawing that. They would have made it on payoffs. So and also they came in Harlem Heat, a tag team nobody had ever heard of them. So I don't know who his agent was, but he had nothing to bargain with here. And, maybe was he a regular agent? I'm sure it wasn't, Barry Bloom or some big time agent that was starting to get involved with some of the top guys in wrestling for Harlem Heat. Was it somebody from Texas that he had met and was trying to do some negotiating for him? I don't know. The point I'm going to make is, after the first couple of years as Harlem Heat, they had then begun to see that, well, Booker's probably a little farther along than his brother. And once 96 came around and they had gotten more money in the budget and started spending more money, and they got Hogan, Heel, NWO, all that stuff, then the company starts actually making money. And then, at the same time, they were moving Booker out into a singles position. So I guess what I'm saying, by the natural evolution of what was going on there from 1993 until 2001, that would be what would have happened to him anyway, even if he had an agent. They would have given him more money because he was a top singles guy. And then when Bischoff comes in and they start the hot run, he was giving everybody a fucking fortune. And when Booker talks about his next contract, I think specific terminology saying my next one would have been, I think it was probably the same contract, but for escalating years, because that's what they wouldn't just sign a top guy to 1 year for X amount of money and then we got to renegotiate in 9 more months. They'd say, okay, we're at 3 years, but first year is 750, second year is 1.2 million, third year, whatever. And he didn't get to the 1.2 million because they went out of business because they were giving everybody contracts like that. Does that make sense to you, Brian?
It does, but I guess that makes the story even more remarkable, if I'm right, because he did get that money. He was due all that money when he left, and he chose an early exit to go to WWE. So he gave up.
That's right.
A lot of money.
But now, hold on. Was he one of the ones that was guaranteed by Turner Home Entertainment, or would he have had to been paid by WCW?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know.
But I do remember, in his defense, I do remember hearing that he gave up some type of payoff to be able to go to the WWE for less money, or WWF then, to not sit out and be gone from the business for a year and a half or whatever. But that was and truthfully, at that point, a lot of the other guys that were sitting out, they were just fine with sitting out. They'd already been up north. They'd done shit. They'd been in the business longer. Booker didn't want to derail some of the best years of his career when he could go somewhere else and get over.